Perhaps another time? Dad chuckled after missing my wedding, even though I covered flights, hotels, and outfits for the entire family. So I ensured they'd feel the weight of their choice. I funded my parents' travel, accommodations, and even their attire so they could be at my wedding. Not one showed up. Maybe next time, my father laughed over the phone. We couldn't skip your sister's brother-in-law's poetry event, my mother explained. I didn't argue. Instead, I penned my own response, and by morning, their shouts filled the air. They say your wedding day is meant to be the happiest, a radiant blur of blossoms, joy, and affection. That's what I pictured when I started planning mine. I secured the venue early. A charming, affordable rooftop adorned with twinkling lights. I meticulously chose the menu, ensuring vegetarian dishes for my sister and sparkling wine for my mother. I even shifted the wedding closer to our hometown to ease my family's travel. When they said they couldn't afford it, I trusted them. Naturally, I did. I offered to assist. When they still wavered, I paid for everything. Flights, hotels, and clothing. I covered it all, including for my sister's husband, so she wouldn't travel alone. I convinced myself it was worth it. That family shows up when it matters. I hadn't realized their definition of showing up was worlds apart from mine. On the wedding day, I woke early. My childhood friend with whom I'd swapped Pokemon cards on the curb texted that he and his partner had arrived safely, having booked their own travel and lodging. No fuss, just excitement to be there. Meanwhile, I kept checking the airline app for my parents' flight. Landed on time. Great. I thought they were en route. In the dressing room, I glanced out the window every few minutes like an anxious teen waiting for a date. The officiant arrived at 3 o'clock, offering a warm smile and asking if we were ready. Just a few more minutes, I said. Maybe they're stuck in traffic. Maybe their phones died. My calls went straight to voicemail. I tried again. No answer. The makeup artist finished my hair. The photographer snapped delicate shots of my bouquet by the window. I smiled for the lens, checked my phone. Nothing. At 3:30, my best friend knocked softly and peeked in. They're asking if you're ready to begin. My throat tightened as I stared at him. My father was supposed to walk me down the aisle. He'd promised. 5 more minutes, I whispered, forcing a strained smile. He nodded, stayed with me, and ignored my trembling hands. I called again. Voicemail. At 3:37, my phone rang. Mom's number. I grabbed it so fast I nearly dropped it. Hey, sweetheart, my mother said. Sorry, we couldn't make it. I blinked, confused. What? What happened? She laughed as if I were being silly. Your sister's brother-in-law had a poetry reading. It meant a lot to him and she didn't want to go alone. We had to be there for her. You know how family works. I said nothing. She filled the silence with cheer. You get it, right? In the background, my father's voice laughed. Maybe next time? In my wedding dress, makeup perfect, bouquet in hand, I stood frozen, processing that my parents chose a poetry reading over my wedding. Not even my sister's event. Her husband's brothers. They hadn't bothered to tell me. They let me wait, worry, and assume they were lost or hurt until the music was supposed to start. They let me pay for everything, rearrange my wedding for their convenience, and it still wasn't enough. At 3:45, I pocketed my phone and took a deep breath. My best friend stood nearby ready to catch me if I faltered. Will you? I asked, voice shaking. Walk me down? He smiled without hesitation. Of course. And so I walked, arm in arm with the boy who built tree houses with me and once stitched a Barbie dress when my sister laughed too hard to help. The ceremony went on. Vows were spoken. Rings were exchanged. Guests clapped and cheered. Someone wept. I smiled through it all. I smiled until my face hurt. I smiled until it felt hollow. At the reception, I laughed at toasts, sliced the cake, and danced with my new husband under the lights I'd hung myself. But inside, something cold and heavy settled in my chest. Later, in the quiet of the hotel room, I sat at the desk by the window, opened my laptop. My husband crossed the room, still in his suit jacket. Are you sure about this? He asked softly. I nodded, eyes fixed on the screen. Yes. He paused, then said, Once you send it, there's no going back. I looked up, offering a real smile for the first time that day. Tomorrow, everything changes. I hit send and didn't look back. They say you shouldn't dwell on the past on your wedding night. You're supposed to look ahead. New chapters, fresh starts, hope. I tried. But even as I curled up with my husband under the thick hotel blankets, my sister lingered in my thoughts, and all the years leading to this moment. My sister, 3 years older and worlds apart, was the kind of girl everyone flocked to in high school. The one with designer clothes, glossy hair, and a laugh that made you feel special just standing near her. She wasn't kind. Not to those who didn't fit, not to people like me. I saw it in the school halls. A subtle smirk here, a whisper behind her hand there. Sometimes it was overt. A fake cough when someone passed in secondhand shoes. Sometimes it was so smooth you barely noticed. But I did, especially when she laughed. At me. My parents called her choosy. They said she had high standards. You can't expect her to befriend just anyone, my mother told me when I came home crying after being excluded again. Toughen up, my father said. Not everyone's meant to be the star, as if I were at fault for not shining like her. I was different. I had a few close friends, and that was enough. I didn't crave the spotlight. My best friend lived next door. We spent countless hours building Lego cities and inventing tales about superheroes who baked pies instead of fighting crime. At 8, he proudly showed off a doll he'd won at a fair, which we named Captain Sparkle. I thought it was hilarious. My parents didn't. Boys like that often turn out odd, my father said loudly enough for me to hear. No wonder he prefers dolls to sports, my mother quipped over dinner. It wasn't cruel, just casual, like they were discussing the forecast. They didn't hide their disapproval. Not when I picked my quiet, quirky friends. Not when I chose books over makeup. Not when I stayed home crafting science fair posters while my sister went to another glitzy party. Eventually, they stopped expecting anything from me and pinned all their hopes on her. As teens, my sister became their prize, prom queen, destined for greatness. Every achievement was a trophy. Every misstep was brushed off as growing pains. When she was caught bullying a girl so badly she changed schools, my parents barely blinked. Teen drama, they said. Girls can be mean. It's normal. When I earned an academic scholarship to a local college, they hardly noticed. No celebration, no word to the neighbors. You were always the quiet one, my mother said vaguely, as if that explained it. I learned something vital then. Our family's love was selective. It was loud for her, silent for me. It showed up for flair, not effort. When I stopped seeking their approval, they stopped seeing me altogether. As we grew older, the gap widened. My sister glided through life like it was her personal stage. Internships she didn't earn, jobs she didn't keep. No matter how often she stumbled, the safety net was there. My parents praised, paid, and made excuses for her. Meanwhile, I worked. Night shifts, fulfilling orders for my small online shop. I paid rent when they called me lucky to live at home, conveniently forgetting I covered half the mortgage. Then one summer I met him, my husband. Older, steady, and the first person in years who didn't look past me when my sister was around. He asked about my work, not hers. He listened without cutting me off. He made me feel like I was enough, just as I was. I fell deeply. When my sister met him, I caught a flicker of interest, quick as a spark. She flashed a wider smile, leaned too close when she laughed, twirled her hair like she did when she wanted someone. Later, she tried to meet him without me. She texted him. Nothing blatant, just a casual invite to hang out without the little sister. He politely declined, and that should have ended it. It didn't. Weeks later, she went to our parents in tears, painting herself as the victim. I saw him first, she claimed. It's not fair. Never mind that she was already with someone else. Never mind that he was never hers. Our family valued drama over truth. She was hurt, so I was the villain. Think about your sister's feelings for once, my mother said. Family matters more than some guy, my father added. No one asked how I felt. No one cared. Her fallback became her husband. Wealthy, reliable, generous to a fault. Perfect for someone who cared more about status than love. Behind closed doors, though, she never stopped talking. I settled. He's dull but loaded. He thinks he hit the jackpot. Poor guy. I heard it all. The jabs, the casual cruelty. She cheated. He'd brag about it after drinks, and my parents just laughed it off. Marriage is messy, my mother said, waving it away. Men are sensitive, my father added. Let her have her fun. This time I wouldn't be the quiet one cleaning up her mess. This time someone deserved the truth. Someone who didn't deserve to be mocked behind his back as I had been for years. Maybe it wasn't vengeance. Maybe it was loyalty. Maybe I was just choosing the side no one else ever had. I closed my laptop and exhaled. Tomorrow would be different, and I wouldn't apologize for it. I woke to my phone buzzing wildly on the nightstand. Half asleep, I saw the missed calls stacking up. 7 from home, 4 from mom's cell, 3 from an unknown, number I instinctively dreaded. I didn't answer. I rolled over, pulled the blanket over my head, and let the hotel's AC hum drown out the noise. New rule. If it's urgent, they can text. Sure enough, texts flooded in. Call us now. What did you do? Fix this. We need to talk. I set the phone face down without reading more. Across the room, my husband stirred, hair disheveled, shirtless, his wedding band glinting in the morning light. "Everything okay?" he mumbled. "Family's in chaos," I said, yawning. "Must be Wednesday." He chuckled, then burrowed under the blanket. By mid-morning, I got a hint of the situation. A text from my cousin, who had the tact of a damp rag. "Heard your sister's husband bailed. Family's losing it." Bailed. That was one way to put it. Over the next few days, fragments trickled in like a puzzle missing half its pieces. After the poetry reading, my sister's husband apparently saw the message I sent. A compilation of screenshots, recordings, proof. Evidence that his wife, whom he'd supported through failed jobs, broken leases, and unfulfilled dreams, had never valued him, mocked him, cheated on him. From what I heard, there wasn't an immediate fight, just silence. A deep, dangerous kind. The kind that hinted the real damage was still hidden. Within days, the consequences surfaced. My sister's husband left quietly, without a scene. He filed for divorce by week's end, and with him went the invisible safety net my parents never admitted they relied on. He stopped funding their business. Unexpected bills piled up. They stopped making excuses for late payments. It was like a faucet had been turned off. I made my own quiet moves. I canceled the automatic payments I'd set up years ago for their utilities, emergency dental bills, and a car lease I'd co-signed. I unlinked my accounts, removed my name from their emergency fund, and moved my savings somewhere secure. Somewhere I wouldn't feel guilty using. I didn't announce it. No big fights. Just a silent exit. Financial ruin doesn't hit all at once. It creeps. First, you miss credit card payments. Then, you pay invoices late. Suppliers start calling instead of emailing polite reminders. The bank regretfully denies your second credit line. It was a slow, painful unraveling, just as they'd let their neglect of me fester over years. Small slights, dismissals, betrayals, until the foundation crumbled. I spent many nights sitting with it. The quiet, the absence, the strange ache of breaking free from something I'd spent my life chasing. I thought letting go of my parents would feel like plunging off a cliff. It didn't. It was like unhooking a weight from my wrist. I wasn't falling. I was rising. But that didn't mean it was painless. There were moments when the hurt hit harder than I expected. Like when I started writing thank you notes to guests and instinctively thought of sending one to my parents, only to remember they weren't there, or when I saw a mother of the bride trinket in a shop, my hand reaching out before my brain caught up. Or when a stranger beamed at my husband and me saying, "Your families must be so proud." I had to laugh because my family only propped up their own egos. When you survive people like that, you develop a wry humor. Not the loud, joyful kind. The dry, worn kind you savor like stale coffee in a rundown diner at 2 a.m., grateful to be anywhere else. There were other shifts, subtle ones. 2 weeks after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. I stared at the test in the cramped hotel bathroom, back against the wall, pulse pounding in my ears. Not planned, not unplanned, just sooner than expected. I sat for a long time, hands on the cool tile, as the world tilted slightly. When I told my husband, he grinned, pulled me close, and said, "We're ready. You're ready." For the first time in years, I believed him. I didn't tell my parents, not even when the texts and emails started pouring in. Some moments are too precious to share with those who wouldn't celebrate them. Some milestones are too sacred to hand over to people who'd use them as leverage. Meanwhile, their world unraveled. I didn't seek updates, but I wasn't deaf. Cousins whispered, old neighbors sent curious texts. The family group chat, long dormant, hummed with secondhand concern. The business faltered. Vendors pulled out. Bills stacked up. They missed small payments, then bigger ones. It wasn't dramatic yet. No foreclosures or court dates. But the pressure was building, like a crack spreading through glass. They didn't come to my door. Not yet. That would come later, when desperation outstripped pride. Still, I wondered if they were shocked. Shocked that the quiet one didn't cave. That the overlooked daughter was the one they'd leaned on most without knowing it. I thought about it on nights when I sat at the kitchen table, house paperwork spread out, my husband flipping through listings, our feet entwined under the table. Some evenings, my childhood friend called. We reminisced about the old neighborhood, laughing about the time we flooded his garage trying to build a water slide. I made loose plans to travel after the baby arrived. He didn't ask about my parents. He didn't need to. That's the thing about real family. They know when silence is survival. By the third month post-wedding, my parents' grip was slipping. Their business announced a temporary closure for renovations that never happened. Their house was quietly listed for early offers, disguised as downsizing for retirement. People noticed. The invitations dried up. The pity began. No shouting matches, no dramatic showdowns, just a steady, methodical collapse, the same way they'd chipped away at my trust over a lifetime. Every day, I drifted further, not falling, soaring. The day they showed up, it was pouring. Not a gentle, cinematic rain, the kind that slaps windows sideways, making you wonder if you need a boat. Fitting, really. The doorbell rang as I folded tiny onesies. Mint green, soft gray, little yellow stars. It rang 5 times in a row like someone was jamming it with their fist. My husband froze. We exchanged a look across the kitchen. We knew. I checked the peephole. There they were, suitcases at their feet, drenched coats, tense, forced smiles. My parents and sister. 3 faces I hadn't seen in months, pressed against the doorway like a warning. I didn't open it right away. I leaned against the door, breathing deeply. My husband placed a steady hand on my back. "We can call now," he said softly. "Not yet," I whispered. "Some things you need to face before you burn them down." When I finally opened the door, they pushed past without a greeting. Rain dripped onto the hardwood. My sister dropped her bag in the middle of the living room. My father planted himself by the TV like he owned it. My mother gave a curt nod, as if expecting hospitality. "We're not leaving," my father declared, voice firm. "Not until you fix this," my mother added. I closed the door slowly, my pulse oddly steady. They launched into an assault. They demanded I call my sister's husband, to say I'd lied, to tell him it was all jealousy, a misunderstanding, a cruel prank born of spite. "You ruined our lives," my mother shouted. "You shamed this family," my father added. "You'll fix this if it's the last thing you do," my sister snapped. Their voices collided, anger, fear, desperation. I stood there, letting it roll over me. I wasn't their daughter in that moment, just a task, a transaction. They kicked a broken machine hoping the prize would still drop. My father made it official. "If you won't help, we're staying until you do." He crossed his arms, daring me to argue. My mother sat on the couch, talking about claiming rooms. My sister headed for the guest bedroom, dragging her bag like she'd already staked it. I laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Because if they thought I was still the girl who'd let them take over, they hadn't been paying attention. "You're trespassing," I said plainly. They stared as if I'd spoken another language. "You invited us," my mother said, voice shrill. "I didn't even give you my address," I replied calmly. My husband was already on the phone, speaking in that calm, efficient tone he used for serious matters. My father stepped closer, towering. "You don't call the cops on family." "Funny," I said, smiling faintly. "I thought family didn't ditch you on your wedding day." Silence, heavy and sharp. For the first time, I saw real fear in my mother's eyes. It didn't take long. 15 minutes later, a knock. 2 officers, polite and professional. I didn't need to say much, just pointed, showed my ID, and handed over the lease in my and my husband's names only. The officers asked my parents and sister to leave, letting them gather their things calmly. My sister screamed, called me heartless, said I was destroying what little family I had left. My mother sobbed. My father muttered threats. But they left, lugging their wet suitcases back into the rain under the officers' watchful eyes. When the door closed, I sank onto the couch, drained. My husband sat beside me, quiet and solid. The baby kicked softly, a reminder. This was family now, not them. Later, we moved again. A house farther away, closer to the life we wanted. We didn't send address updates. Only a few knew where we were. My best friend and his partner visited sometimes, bringing silly gifts and stories of road trips and late-night diners in unfamiliar cities. I built the life I'd dreamed of with my parents, simple, supportive, unconditional, somewhere else. I built it better. I heard about the fallout through distant relatives and shared contacts. My parents' prized house sold at a loss. Their business shut down. My sister, once too good for consequences, now crashes on couches, blaming everyone but herself. I didn't reach out. Not when the divorce finalized. Not when the bankruptcy hit. Not when their social media posts dried up like dust on a forgotten shelf. I used to think cutting them off would feel like ripping out a piece of myself, like losing a limb. It didn't. It was like standing up after realizing you weren't broken, just sitting in the wrong place all along. I still keep the mint green onesie tucked in a drawer, the first one I bought. The one I was too scared to share. The one I knew I didn't need their approval for. My child will never think love is earned by being useful. She'll never feel small in her own home. She'll know what family truly means. And the best part, they'll never know her name. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if sending that message, cutting them off, calling the police was necessary. But then I remember the girl I was, the one who kept forgiving, the one who kept hoping, and I know I didn't go too far. They just never thought I'd go anywhere at all. Still, I'd like your thoughts.